sharing an Amtrak car recently with four chatty debutantes on their way to a cotillion in Boston. Powerless not to eavesdrop, I started cataloging all the vernacular expressions they emphatically overused, transcribing the choicest dialogue to Facebook. They're just jealous of her. They're jealous because she's pretty and has a nice personality. She's pretty, so jealous. But the short phrase that so got my attention was "I'm obsessed." I hear it all the time, said Sofia Cavorlo, an online editor for the fashion retailer Opening Ceremony who is in her mid-20s. In her industry, the older set is probably less inclined to use exaggeration, Ms. Cavorlo noted, deeming it very much specific to our generation. When and why did this verb, which once connoted a serious psychological disorder, become hijacked by the fashionable young women and a few men of America? The word obsessed, tracked by Googling Graham's search in books, sees a sharp rise from 1900 to 1920, then a slow and steady increase to 2008 when a Graham data stops. The phrase "I'm obsessed," however, is flat and low until the mid-50s, after which it steeply ascends. The first instance of "I'm obsessed" shows up in the New York Times archive in 1967. There are 4 examples from that year, and then not again until 1969, in a Joan Baez profile. After that, they're few and far between, with a 5-year gap between 1980 and 1985, totaling just 19 by the end of that year. It heats up a little after that, but remains sporadic, with just 98 total entries through 2007. Then, around 2008, "I'm obsessed" takes off. It's now entrenched in our everyday informal language, most often employed by young women, from InStyle's daily wear obsessed feature one object of obsession, a $4,000 Fendi bag, to the ironically titled gossip site imageobsessed.com. A Twitter search for "I'm obsessed" at any time of the day will bring up approximately 5 results per minute. The recent sampling of obsessions deemed worthy for public display: cream soda, cardigans, ketchup, one girl's own eyes. One reason for the mainstreaming of obsessed, in fact, may be the very mental malady with which we associate it. According to the World Health Organization, obsessive-compulsive disorder is one of the top 20 causes worldwide among adults for illness-related disability. Formerly a rare diagnosis, it is the obsessive disease of our time, said Leonard J. Davis, a professor of English at the University of Illinois at Chicago and author of Obsession: A History Not to Mention. Go Ask Your Father, One Man's Obsession to Find Himself, His Origins, and the Meaning of Life Through Genetic Testing. Erin McKean, founder of the online dictionary Wordnik.com, said she sees it as a parallel to a word like neurotic, which, like obsessed, started as a diagnosis and ended up as an adjective that became more social than clinical. Though some negative associations linger: boiled money, anyone saying "I'm obsessed with" as opposed to "I love" might also advertise the speaker's intellectual heft, given its scholarly implications of philosophers and researchers being obsessed with problems, much as random is most closely linked to the highbrow realm of statistical probabilities. In addition, there's the civil unpleasure of hissing those multiple S's, allowing for an extended "I'm obsessed," as opposed to clunkier alternatives like "I'm infatuated." And while Ms. McKean cautioned that it's difficult to pinpoint why a word goes viral, I think the introduction of Calvin Klein's Obsession fragrance in 1985, and the risque ads and haunting commercial in 1993 featuring Kate Moss whispering the word over and over, helped bring it into lexical prominence. That campaign, said Professor Davis, was a perfect example of our culture that's geared to obsession. We think that things are not good unless we're obsessed about them, he continued. If you're only mildly interested in your partner, that's not as hot as being obsessed about somebody. Being blandly detached and mild seems like the failure. Contrary to our claims of obsession, Professor Davis believes that the generation now is very low-key. The emotions are flat, compared to movies from the 50s, when people look sentimental. Consequently, he said, it inflates the language. We're using this powerful word, but lowering the standard by having everybody be obsessed by everything. This jives with a general culture of hyperbole on the internet, where in an attempt to stand out from the noise, everything is the best thing. However, according to Professor Davis, the etymology for obsess dates back to the turn of the 16th century, though obsessed itself wasn't used until the mid-19th century and is related to the devil. Possession meant the devil occupied your soul and you had no awareness. If you were obsessed, it meant the devil occupied your body but you were aware. The meaning, then, has changed from something people are forced to do but want to stop, to something they want to do and get pleasure from, he said. Those pleasures, Ms. McKean suggested, might be more socially acceptable for young women than for emotionally guarded young men to voice. Moreover, expressing one's obsession is almost a humble brag, she said. It's one way to talk about and promote myself, but I'll poke a little fun at myself and make it seem almost pathological. There's an interesting parallel with the word love, she said. In the late 1800s, there was an increase in young women of using the word love for things that were not romantic love. Ms. McKean cited a passage from the book Anne of the Island 1915 in which an older woman takes him to task for declaring her love for a cottage. The girls nowadays indulge in such exaggerated statements that one never can tell what they do mean. It wasn't so in my young days. Then the girl did not say she loved turnips, in just the same tone as she might have said she loved her mother or her savior. Turnips are one thing, romantic obsession is quite another. Obsession is fatal in love, Professor Davis pointed out. If you're really obsessed with somebody, it's someone you can't get. James Lasdoun can attest to the word's more sinister overtones. His recently published memoir, Give Me Everything You Have, on being stalked, is a harrowing account of a former female student who harassed him over email while slandering his reputation across the internet. As Mr. Lasdoun's book makes clear, modern technology facilitates the cultivation and escalation of obsession. Thanks to social media and Google, all you need is a rabbit hole of a Wi-Fi connection and a passing interest to develop a compulsive fascination. It's a word that seems to have an appealing for if you haven't actually encountered the reality that it contains, Mr. Lasdoun said, of obsessed. That's why it catches on with people who use it in a light-hearted way but probably haven't experienced the compulsions. It might be a good thing for a researcher to become obsessed with a subject, but to become obsessed with a human being, it's not. It is indeed hard to imagine, say, Stephen Hawking boasting about being obsessed with M-theory. But when a subject is this season's bells, and the speaker is not truly thinking about them every waking second, Mr. Lasdoun concurred with Professor Davis's and Ms. McKean's takes. It's a gesture of self-promotion, in a sense self-aggrandizement, he said. They're compensating for not having the capacity to get all that interested in things. Younger people create an atmosphere of hysteria around themselves and get caught up in it. Ms. McKean had a milder view. It's basically a case of hyperbolic metaphorical extension, which is just a fancy way of saying it is fun to use over-the-top words about less than over-the-top things, she said. This is pretty common in English. Awesome used to mean inspiring and now it means, that was a great burrito, dude.